Let's talk about mental health and what I've learned from over a decade of depression, and most importantly, what we as leaders and managers, what we can do to truly support our teams. Now, it shouldn't take moments like World Mental Health Day or initiatives like Are You OK Day to prompt these conversations. Events like these are amazing for raising awareness, but conversations about mental health, they can't be this once a year thing. It's an everyday responsibility that falls on every single one of us. I wanted today to share my story because what I've learned is where we can create the space to open up, be vulnerable, it actually creates a space for others to do the same. And I will be honest, I used to be terrified to talk about my own struggles with mental health. And they were for good reasons. I'm going to talk about that story in a little bit. But if there's one thing that I've learned from the whole experience, it's the power of vulnerability. So stick around because I'm going to do my best to share some practical ideas as well that you can take as a manager to help your team. Actually, even if you are in the trenches yourself, possibly some ideas for how you can help yourself or ask for what you need. More often than not, we can learn from the bad experiences than the good, the bad leaders versus the good leaders. And so in this, I'm going to talk about some of those bad experiences as well. So hi, I'm 𝗂𝗲𝗃𝗃, if we've not met. I'm the founder of a leadership consultancy called 𝗬𝗵𝘂𝗃𝗃𝗃. And both from my own experience being in corporate, plus having worked with thousands of leaders over the past 5 years, I know that there is less stigma associated with mental health than there used to be. You might be surprised by the number of my clients who combine coaching with therapy as an example. People often think that you only need one person to talk to, right? And that you only talk to someone when something's wrong. But that's not actually always helpful. See, in therapy, you look backwards. You work to try and untangle or at least make sense of some of the messed up stuff that's happened in your past that's perhaps caused you some challenges. Whereas in coaching, that's actually much more forward facing. You work with a coach to plan ahead, to identify what goals you're going after and what needs to be true in order for you to achieve them. I've had coaches for 6 years now, yet for me personally, therapy is actually relatively new. It's curious that actually I never had a therapist the whole time that I was depressed. Now, when things are much more rosy, I actually choose for it to complement my coaching. But there's a really good reason though why so many people are afraid of sharing what's going on in their head. The first time I shared not even my depression, but how I'd been dealing with anxiety at work, I was 22. I was coming off the grad scheme and I was invited to share the biggest learnings and achievements, sort of a panel as you progress off the scheme. And I decided that rather than share some of the amazing financial successes and results that I've turned around and categories that I'd smashed, I decided instead to share my own experience of dealing with and overcoming the fact that I'd felt so stressed doing what I was doing and how I'd managed my own anxiety, etc. I thought that was a much more interesting story. Now, in hindsight, I probably should have shared that I'd saved £1 million, blah, 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 because what happened next was that probably a very well-meaning HR person decided to take work off me. And look, this probably came from a good place, but I was genuinely horrified. Work was the one thing that made the darkness feel less. My work was where I felt competent. It was the thing that kept me sane. It was the thing that made me feel like I had worth. So for this woman to, again, I'm sure it came from a good place, but for her to take, or to try to take, that thing off me? Well, I learned very, very quickly that it was not safe to talk about how I felt, to button it up, keep it hidden. And honestly, at that stage, I thought depression was just who I was. It was always something I was going to have to manage and live with and just not tell anyone. But the reality is, I was so not alone. It felt like I was alone, but you know, the stats, the 1 in 4. Well, when you're that one, it's often really hard to feel like you're not an island and that you have to wear a mask. And that can get incredibly tiring to put on. So fast forward 6 years or something, I was living in Australia. It was Mental Health Awareness Week, and I was in a pretty dark place myself then, still hiding it. Work was still my crutch. It made me feel somewhat normal. And I'll never know exactly why or what gave me this massive urge to do something about it. But I wanted to do something more than just recognize the week with a kind of email that goes round. I wanted to do something bigger. So I rallied a little mini team of volunteers together, and we organized an entire week of events, from morning desk drops, yoga classes, walks, talks. We cobbled together something that I genuinely was so proud of. And when that Monday morning, the week of, came round, I decided, literally a last minute urge, to, at the team huddle in front of 100 odd people in my team, not only announce the activities that were going to go on that week, but actually to share my own struggle, my own battle, with this hope that one person would feel less alone by me sharing that. I will never, ever forget the response that I had from doing that day. The number of people who approached me to tell me about their experiences, how they had struggled in the past, or the friends, family, colleagues that they were supporting, or other people who were going through it. I was literally inundated with support. See, no one is actually unaffected by mental ill health. Sure, you might not have experienced it yourself yet, or you might never. Amazing. But I guarantee that everyone has indirectly been affected by it. And actually, the data shows that the more intelligent you are, the more likelihood you are to suffer. And so big corporate organisations like the one that I was in, with a host of high achievers, well, we were kind of more guaranteed to over-index. So with my secret of the bag, I have to say, it was actually a bit of an enormous relief. I could actually be honest about some of the struggles. I could ask for what I needed. And though the depression did hang around for another 18 months or so after that day, and the story of how I overcome that's for another day, but I felt so much less alone. And I was also left with this enormous mission to try and do everything in my power to destigmatize it for other people. And I'll be honest, I often don't think that I'm actually doing enough. Though my depression no longer defines me, it's taken me a really long time to get comfortable talking about it in a way that doesn't trigger me. Okay, I'm a little bit emotional now. See, I have no interest in anyone feeling sorry for me. That's definitely not what I want. And I'm absolutely not sharing this as a prompt to anyone else to be like, stand up in front of 100 people and like you're in AA, go, hi, I'm Chloe and I'm depressed. But what I have been surprised with is by the number of people from my past who were actually really shocked to hear that that was what I was going through at the time. I was super high functioning, outwardly, really able to play the part, and people just didn't know. And I think that's a lesson to us as leaders, is that you can't really necessarily know what's going on with the individuals in your team. But also for us, if we are suffering or experiencing a challenge, to actually ask for the support that we need. After that, I made it clear with my boss that my mental health had to be my number one priority, and it still is to this day. And that what help or support would look like for me, and this was before hybrid was a thing, would be that I would work from home once a fortnight. It would give me some space where I didn't have to put the mask on, I could just get some stuff done. I told him I also needed to come in 30 minutes later, because if I went to yoga first thing, I would feel 10 times better and he'd get so much more out of me as a result. And on the days where my anxiety were at like wild levels, I could lean on him. He was amazing, but he could not have done any of that if I hadn't first helped him see what support looked like for me, because it's different for each of us. So as leaders, we actually need to try and create an environment where our team members feel safe to share what they specifically need or what support looks like for them. We can't blanket assume 22-year-old me might have been brave enough to actually share her struggles, but she didn't know how to communicate how she needed support, nor was the support that she was then offered, or that I was offered, appropriate. You know, it's not easy to manage people, and I am absolutely not saying that that individual was coming from a bad place. Also, as managers, we're often going through our own stuff too, but we do need to create space for our team members to be brave, to be vulnerable. We need to listen to what they need, and that can make all the difference. Mental health isn't fluffy. Well-being shouldn't be considered fluffy. I know in so many organizations it's kind of swept under the rug or put under, EAP budgets and all that kind of stuff. But psychological safety is the foundation of high-performing teams. Google found in their Project Aristotle study, which I talk about a lot, of all the hundreds of attributes that could contribute to a high-performing team, the number one most consistent thing that was spotted was psychological safety. So creating space for that in your team, creating that with your team is not a nice to do. It's, if you want results, if you want a high performing team, it's a must do. And it's not just because so that colleagues can share things like this, but it could be that you create that so that they feel safe to speak up when something not right is happening, or if they disagree, or if they have reservations. Creating space for that, it's vital. So I'm going to wrap it up. To those of you who are struggling right this second, I see you, I feel you, I've been there. You are not alone. To the leaders who are showing up for their teams, I absolutely salute you. I recently took a really small hiatus from my own mental health from social media, and this is the first video I just decided to come back with afterwards. And with it, I came back with an intention actually to expand the focus of my YouTube channel. It had been purely about team events, and those moments that teams come together are absolutely pivotal for building the foundation of high-performing teams' psychological safety. So that's still absolutely the focus, but now it's a bit broader. It's called Leadership with Chloe, and it's intended to be a space to share my own lessons, my own experience as a leader being led, but that of other leaders that I think are incredible too. My hope is that it will help you become what I call a leader that lasts. So more on that soon. I hope you'll join me by subscribing or leaving a comment. Truly, it means the world to me. Until next time, with love.